I regret to report that I believe the Tang gang is losing its luster in Manhattan, Kansas. And that's true. I don't like to report that because all of us here at Baylor would love Jerome Tang, love the success that he had early on at Kansas State, hate that he beats Baylor all the time, don't love that. But such a great ambassador for Baylor for so long. Like that's a guy you can't help but want to be successful, even though he's in your conference. And right now, things are not going well for Coach Tang and the Kansas State Wildcats. It was ugly over the weekend. They lost by 30 to Houston. Really at home, by the way, at Bramlage, the Octagon. They lost by 30 points to Houston. Houston's a good team, don't get me wrong, but they gave up 87. And it's bad. They're under 500 right now at 7-8. And it's been a really tough road for them. They're down near the bottom of the Big 12 standings. They're in 14th. They do have a Big 12 win over Cincinnati. So do we. But they lost by double digits to Oklahoma State. They got blown out by Wichita State. They lost to Drake at home, got blown out by St. John's. Like they lost to Liberty. Remember that? They lost to Liberty in November. Like this is really not good. And there was a ton of friction between Tang and the president last year with that player who was suspended indefinitely. And it's now becoming like it might be borrowed time. Like I think the fans are starting to get upset. And there's already that friction between you and ultimately your boss, the university president. Like this might not be a good thing for Jerome Tang right now. And I don't know how much better this gets for Kansas State this year, especially with, I think an improved quality in the Big 12. We don't have as many teams up at the top like we had last year in this conference. But you saw the way Tech played Iowa State. You saw the way, Colorado beat UConn earlier this year, and West Virginia's had a couple of big wins. They beat Gonzaga. They beat Kansas. So there is still a great element of quality in this conference. And I just don't see a world where Kansas State rattles off 7 or 8 in a row. By the way, they do not play Baylor this year. So if this is truly kind of the march towards the end for Jerome Tang, you got to think Scott Drew is going to call him and say, hey, you're a head coach. You're a good head coach. We know you're going to be a head coach again. But how about this? You come back here and be our lead assistant again, like you were so successfully. We go on. Maybe we go to the Elite Eight. Maybe we go to the Final Four. Because you're that missing piece. And then you've got your pick again, because then people will not remember the last season at Kansas State after you do that. They'll remember the fact that you took them to the Elite Eight year 1. And we're a couple possessions away from the Final Four. That's what they'll remember. But Kansas State, of course, they're worried this is going to become another Bruce Weber thing. Like I understand that worry. It happens to all of us at some point where you're like, ooh, we had it with Dave Aranda in football, right? Like, oh man, he had that one good season with other guys' players. Like, is this actually going to turn around? That's what they're thinking about at Kansas State right now. But if you're Baylor and this thing does go south for the Wildcats and Jerome Tang is relieved, fired, like you'd take him back in a second. I think this next thing I'm going to talk about gets a little overblown. But the proof is also kind of in the pudding, in a sense, of after Jerome Tang left, this team, this Baylor basketball program, while still successful in some ways, did lose kind of its luster, lost kind of its edge. They have not been a good defensive team since he left, is really what I'm getting at. They have not been a good defensive team since then. I think they're figuring some things out on this year's team, but they have not been the suffocating defense that they were with Jerome Tang. And you really see it the last 3 years of Tang being there, when you've got the Jacobs offense in full effect and that Tang defense in full effect. You go from, 26-4, number one ranked team in the country for however 5 or 6 straight weeks in 2020, could well have been a Final Four team if that tournament doesn't get canceled, national champions the next year, to regular season conference champs and a number one seed again the next year. Like, that was the best 3 years Baylor basketball has ever had. And it was because those two things were clicking on all cylinders. You had the Scott Drew leader of men, you had the Jerome Tang defense, you had the John Jacobs offense, and it was all there. If this doesn't work out for Tang in Manhattan this year, Baylor should be that first call. Baylor should welcome him back in a second, and it might only be for a year or two. And then he might go on and become a head coach again. He's certainly capable of that. But that might be the missing piece for Baylor to get back to where they were a couple of years ago and really competing for the highest honors of college basketball. Because I think the last couple of years they've had the talent to do so, but something has been missing. It's not been put together. I don't know if it's Jerome Tang or not. But look, after Jerome Tang left, it became a lot more difficult for this program. And now you're making excuses as to why they're losing in the second round every year. It can't be a matchup thing every single year. So if that does happen that way, and this is his last year at Kansas State, we will bring the Tang gang back to Waco. Let's do it. But honestly, maybe this is just the compassionate guy in me rather than the Baylor sports fan. I do hope he figures it out at Kansas State. I really do. He's just a guy that you root for, man. I'm sorry. I can't say a bad word about him. He's such a good guy, and I think he is a good basketball coach. But this right now is a very tough situation in Manhattan, the way things are going. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Would you take Jerome Tang back at Baylor? And if you're a Kansas State fan watching, what's the issue here? Is he on borrowed time? Is the seat as hot as it's been? Let me know down in the comments below, or tweet at us at Locked On Baylor. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you like the video, like the video. It really helps out the channel a lot. And we're on the march towards 4,000 subscribers. We need your guys' help in that. I know there's still a ton of you that watch and listen every day that are not subscribed. It helps out, and it gets you these videos faster. You can also ring the notification bell to get notified every time we're dropping a video on YouTube, because then after that, it's going to be wherever you get your podcast. We'll catch up with you later today and talk a little bit of men's basketball and maybe a potential football hire. That's going to be coming up later today on your favorite show. Thank you for making it your first listen today and every day. That show is Locked On Baylor. Thank you for making it to the end of the video, and thank you for making the Locked On Podcast Network part of your daily routine. We have got you covered with the most Baylor Bears athletics coverage of any outlet that's not directly tied into Baylor University. So if you want more of that, be sure to like and subscribe. Ring that notification bell to get notified every time we're dropping a video here on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks, and sic 'em.